I never thought my parents would not invite me to my own brother's wedding. To understand this, I first want to share the story of my life before this happened. I'm Kelly, sitting in my office in Alma, the warm light from the restaurant below pouring through the glass like a lifeline in the black November sky. The vintage clock on the wall, a tarnished brass thing my first chef mentor gave me, ticked past 9 p.m., its soft clicks swallowed by the quiet. Downstairs, the last handful of diners lingered, their laughter and the clatter of plates drifting up faintly. Alma, my third restaurant, had been open a year and was already a local darling, tables snapped up in 30 minutes most nights. At 32, I'd clawed my way into something real, something mine, and damn if it didn't feel good. On my desk, a glossy food magazine lay open to a page I'd read a dozen times today. Entrepreneur of the Year, Narina Ford. The photo caught me mid-laugh, with my chef sauce streaked across my cheek like war paint. A rare moment when I wasn't overthinking every move. I traced the headline with my fingertip, letting the pride sink in. But pride's a fickle thing. It doesn't sit still. My eyes drifted to the accounting ledger next to it, the one my brother Dylan had slapped together for the month. I flipped it open, scanning the columns of numbers, and that's when the unease crept in. A whisper at first, like a draft I couldn't pin down. I'd built this empire from nothing, no trust fund, no handouts, just a scholarship to culinary school, nights scrubbing dishes, and a bank loan I'd paid off with sweat and sleepless hours. My first spot, a tiny bistro, came from my own savings. The second, a gamble that paid off, and now Alma, the crown jewel. My parents never got it. To them, I was the backup kid, the one who should have waited her turn. Dylan, their golden boy, got the spotlight. Eldest son, big dreams even if he never lived up to them. I could still hear the roar of the crowd at his high school baseball games, mum and dad snapping photos like he'd hit a grand slam, while my choir solos echoed to empty seats. Too busy, they'd say, shrugging it off. His crabbed graduation got a backyard barbecue. My valedictorian speech earned a grunt from dad. Should have tried sports. And Dylan smirking, you're just lucky, cow. Look. As if luck spent years julienning carrots till my hands bled. 4 years ago, I hired him to do my books, not because he was good, God knows, he wasn't, but because Mum and Dad begged me. Give him a chance, Narina, Mum had said, her voice thick with that guilt trip tone I knew too well. He's family. Dylan had a finance degree he'd barely scraped through and a resume that read like a list of crash landings. 3 jobs in 5 years, all duds. I caved, figuring I could keep an eye on him. Obligation, not strategy. Now, staring at his handwriting on the ledger, I wondered if that was my first mistake. There it was. $500 labeled management fees every month, no explanation. Small enough to miss if you weren't looking, but it stuck out now like a splinter under my nail. I frowned, flipping back a few pages. Same thing, month after month. What the hell was he managing? A knot snapped me out of it. Come in, I called, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. Jenny, Alma's manager and the closest thing I had to a right hand, poked her head through the door. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, a few strands loose from a long shift. Narina, last table's wrapping up, she said. Mind if I head out? Go for it, I said, forcing a smile. You killed it tonight, Jenny, thanks, she grinned, leaning against the frame. Reservations are stacked tomorrow, full house, brace yourself for a wild one. Wouldn't have it any other way. Night. She nodded and slipped out, her footsteps fading down the hall. I liked Jenny. She didn't mess around, didn't need hand-holding. She'd been with me since the second restaurant, back when I was still figuring out how to run a crew without losing my mind. If Alma was my crown, she was the one keeping it polished. I leaned back in my chair, the ledger still open, that $500 nagging at me. It wasn't much in the grand scheme, peanuts compared to the revenue pouring in. But it didn't sit right. Dylan's work had always been sloppy, full of typos and half-assed excuses, but this felt different. Intentional, maybe. I rubbed my eyes, telling myself I'd dig into it over the weekend. Just a little longer and I'd have answers. I shoved the ledger into my bag and stood, stretching the stiffness out of my shoulders. The office was small, just a desk, a filing cabinet, and that clock. But it was mine, same as everything below. I flicked off the light and headed out, locking the door behind me. The The November wind hit hard as I stepped outside, sharp and cold, slicing through my coat like it had a score to settle. I paused under Alma's neon sign, the letters buzzing faintly in the dark. A beacon I'd built from scratch, a lighthouse in a life that hadn't always given me much to navigate by. It glowed steady, proud, and for a second I let myself bask in it. This was my world, my rules. No one was going to screw it up. Not my parents, not Dylan, not anyone. But as I walked to my car, the wind tugging at my scarf, that splinter of doubt dug deeper. I glanced back at the sign one last time, its light cutting through the night like a promise. Or a warning. I didn't know it then, but I was holding the match to a fuse I couldn't unlight. The ledger in my bag felt heavier than it should have, like it was whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. By the time I got home, I decided I'd tear it apart this weekend, line by line. Something was off, and whatever it was lurking just out of sight, waiting to be dragged into the open. Rain tapped a steady rhythm against my apartment window that Saturday night, the sound a dull roar under the dim glow of my desk lamp. I'd dragged the ledger out of my bag the second I got home from Alma, its weight nagging at me all day like a splinter I couldn't ignore. The neon sign's glow still burned in my mind, a lighthouse I'd built, one I swore I'd protect, and now, sitting here with a glass of bourbon in hand, I was ready to rip open whatever Dylan had buried in these pages. I flipped to the first sheet, my pen scratching notes as I went, and it didn't take long for that whisper of doubt from last night to turn into a scream. There it was again, $500, tagged as management fees, every damn month, no receipts, no details. But that was just the start. I dug deeper, flipping back through the year, and the numbers grew teeth. $1,000 in July, $2,000 in September, all under vague labels like consulting or miscellaneous expenses. My pulse kicked up, a hot flush creeping up my neck. These weren't mistakes. They were moves, calculated, quiet, and right under my nose. Dylan wasn't just sloppy, he was bleeding me dry, one sly cut at a time. I slammed the ledger shut, the thud echoing in the empty room, and leaned back, staring at the ceiling as the rain picked up outside. How long had he been playing me? And why? My phone buzzed on the desk, slicing through the haze. It was Megan, my cousin, her name lighting up the screen like a lifeline. I answered, forcing my voice steady. Hey, Megan. What's up? Her cheerful tone hit me like a slap. Narina, just checking in. Where were you last weekend? I figured you'd be at Dylan's wedding with the rest of us. The words landed like a punch to the gut, knocking the air out of me. Wedding? I croaked. I thought it was next weekend. She laughed, oblivious. Nope, last Saturday. Small thing, just Dylan and Candice, close family and a few friends. You didn't know? My mouth went dry, the room tilting as I gripped the phone tighter. No, I said, barely a whisper. I didn't. She paused, catching the edge in my voice. You okay? You sound weird. I swallowed hard, the bourbon burning in my throat. Yeah, just surprised. Thanks for calling me, Gon. Let's grab coffee soon. I hung up before she could push, my hands shaking as I set the phone down. Last weekend. I'd been at Alma, grinding through a double shift, thinking the wedding was still a week away. They'd told me, Mom, Dad, Dylan, next Saturday, clear as day. But Megan's call cracked that lie wide open. I wasn't just forgotten. I was erased. I didn't think I dialed Mom, the line ringing sharp and cold in my ear. She picked up fast, her voice too bright. Nerina, what a nice surprise. I cut through the bullshit. Mum, was Dylan's wedding last weekend? A beat of silence, then a flimsy laugh. Oh yeah, it was. Didn't we say next week? Must have gotten mixed up. Mixed up. My chest tightened, anger simmering under my skin. Mixed up? You told me the wrong date, no one else. Her tone shifted, fake concern dripping through. Don't make a big deal out of it, honey. It was a small thing. I'll send you pics. It was gorgeous. My phone pinged, seconds later, a flood of images. Dylan in a tux, Candice glowing in white, Mum and Dad toasting with wine, relatives grinning ear to ear, a perfect little family portrait, minus one glaring absence. Me. Nice. I said, my voice flat as asphalt. Mum didn't miss a beat. Dylan's speech was so moving, brought tears to my eyes. Why are you so upset? It's not like we meant to leave you out, I snapped. Why didn't you tell me the real date? Why was I the only one cut out? Silence stretched thick and heavy until Dad's gruff voice broke in. Narina, you're too dramatic. You're always swamped with that restaurant. We didn't want to drag me away. It was my brother's wedding, I said, my voice rising. You're blowing this up, he barked. It's not a conspiracy. I'd heard enough. I'm done, I said, low and final. Done with the lies. I've been the outsider in this family my whole life and I'm sick of pretending it's fine. Mum's plea came quick. Nirina, we love you. I laughed, bitter. Love respects people. You've never respected me. I hung up, the click like a gunshot, my heart hammering as the photos stared back from my screen, proof of a betrayal I couldn't unsee. I needed air, needed someone who'd get it. I grabbed my coat and drove to Lila's, my best friend since culinary school, the one person who'd never fed me excuses. Rain streaked the windshield, blurring the city lights into a smear of colour as I pulled up to her loft. She opened the door in sweat, her hazel eyes narrowing the second she saw my face. Spill, she said, no preamble, ushering me in. The place smelled of lavender and takeout, a sanctuary from the storm outside. I sank onto her couch, a bottle of Pinot between us, and let it pour out. The ledger's red flags, the wedding I wasn't invited to, the photos that carved me out of my own family. Lila's jaw tightened, her fingers tapping the wine glass. They ditched you from Dylan's wedding on purpose? That's a new level of shitty, even for them. I nodded, staring into the ruby liquid. And I think he's been skimming cash from Alma. Thousands, Lila, for months. She leaned forward, fierce. You've got proof. I shook my head. Not airtight yet, but it's there. I feel it, she snorted, grabbing her sketch pad. A reflex when she was pissed. Narina, you built that place from the ground up. If he's screwing you over, you can't let it slide, family or not. Her pencil scratched the page, rough lines forming a bird. A phoenix, wings sharp and defiant. You're tougher than this, she said, sliding it toward me. Burn it down if you have to, but don't let him drag you under. I left her place an hour later, the rain easing into a drizzle, that phoenix sketch burning a hole in my pocket. My headlights cut through the wet streets, the city quiet except for the hum in my head. Lila was right. I'd fought too hard for Alma, for everything, to let Dylan chip away at it. The ledger wasn't just numbers anymore, it was a map of his greed, and the wedding was the final shove. They'd drawn a line, and I wasn't on their side of it. Back home, I dropped my keys on the counter, the apartment silent except for the faint drip of a leak somewhere. I pulled the sketch out, tracing the phoenix's wings with my thumb. It wasn't just a drawing, it was a promise. Tomorrow, I'd tear through every transaction, every lie, until I had the truth in my hands, and when I did, someone was going to pay for it. The rain stopped, leaving only the echo of my resolve, steady as a heartbeat in the dark. Monday hit like a freight train, and I was at Alma before the sun even thought about rising, the sky a slab of grey steel stretching over the city. I'd barely slept, Lila's phoenix sketch still searing my brain from last night, a jagged promise that I'd claw the truth out of Dylan's mess, no matter what it cost. The restaurant was silent as I unlocked the back door, the hum of the fridge the only sound as I slipped into my office and fired up the accounting system. My fingers flew over the keys, pulling every transaction from the past year, my coffee growing cold on the desk. By the time the first streaks of dawn crept through the blinds, I had it, line after line of poison, $500 monthly management fees stretching back years, spiking to $1,000, then $2,000 in recent months, all tied to fake vendors and ghost invoices. My screen glowed with the evidence, a neon map of betrayal, and my hands shook as I printed it out, the pages stacking like a guillotine blade. This wasn't carelessness. This was Dylan carving chunks out of my life's work. And I was done playing nice. He rolled in at 9:30, late as always, a paper cup of coffee in hand and that smug grin plastered on his face, like he owned the place. "Morning, Carl," he said, the nickname dripping with that old mockery I'd learned to hate. I didn't flinch, just leaned back in my chair, the stack of printouts in front of me. "Morning," I said, my voice tight as a wire. "Congrats on the wedding. Heard it was a blast." He froze for a split second, then shrugged, sipping his coffee. "Thanks. Mum tell you? Guess I got the date mixed up." The lie was so casual it almost sounded true, but I wasn't buying it anymore. "Mixed up," I echoed, sliding the papers across the desk. "Like these numbers? Been checking the books, Dylan. $500 a month since you started. Management fees, then $1,000, $2,000. Lately, fake receipts, bullshit vendors. What's that about?" His jaw clenched, eyes darting to the pages, but he played it cool. "Just expenses, Narina. Standard stuff." I stood, leaning forward, my voice low and sharp. "Standard? Mom says you've been sending them money every month. My money, under your name. You've been stealing from me." He slammed the cup down, coffee sloshing over the rim. "Stealing? That's insane. It's for family. They needed more than your tight-ass handouts." I didn't blink. "Then why not ask me? Why lie to them? To me?" He sneered, stepping closer. "You wouldn't get it. Perfect Narina, always on top. What have you ever done for us?" The words hit like a slap, but I held my ground. "I gave you this job. No experience, no nothing, and you repay me by bleeding me dry." I pulled the legal notice from my drawer, a single sheet I'd had my lawyer draft overnight, and slapped it on the desk. "You're fired," I said, my voice cold as the steel outside. "Pay it back or I sue." His face went red, veins bulging in his neck. "You can't fire me, we're blood!" he roared, snatching the paper, his hands trembling. "Leave," I said, pointing to the door. "Now!" He stared at me, eyes wild, then crumpled the notice in his fist. "Perfect, Narina," he spat, backing toward the exit. "Forever alone, Narina. No one sticks around you ever wonder why." The door slammed behind him, the bang ringing in my ears as I sank into my chair, adrenaline crashing through me. My hands shook, but my chest felt lighter, like I'd cut a chain I hadn't known was there. This wasn't just a firing, it was a reckoning. I grabbed my phone and texted my lawyer, "Go." Whatever came next, I was ready. Alma buzzed that night, the kitchen a blur of fire and steel as I cooked beside my crew, losing myself in the rhythm. After close, I poured wine for the stragglers, dodging their questions about Dylan with a vague, "He's out for a bit." I didn't owe them the ugly details. Not yet. But when I got home, the quiet shattered. A beat-up sedan idled in my driveway, headlights off, and there he was. Dylan slumped on my porch steps, his silhouette jagged against the streetlight. I stepped out of my car, keys biting into my palm. "What now?" I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my gut. He stood, swaying slightly, his eyes bloodshot and blazing. "Finally," he growled, crossing his arms. "Look at me. You owe me that much." I almost laughed. "Owe you? After you stole from me?" He stepped closer, his breath sour with booze. "It was a debt, okay? For Candace's ring, the wedding. You flipped out over nothing." "Nothing." The word lit a fuse in me. "You stole thousands," I said, my voice rising. "Why not ask me straight up?" He snorted, looming over me. "Beg you, Miss Perfect. I was supposed to save them. Mom and Dad expected it. I held his gaze. So you took my money, sent it as yours, and cut me out of your wedding because... What, I'd ruin it." He smirked, cruel. "You'd steal the show, like always. Candace doesn't even know." My stomach twisted. "She will," I said. "You told her I'm your partner here?" His smirk faltered. "It's half mine. Hire me back. I need it. Now." I shook my head. "No. Return everything tomorrow. Security'll be at Alma." His face twisted, rage boiling over. "You'll pay for this," he snarled, then spun around, kicking my mailbox hard enough to dent it before peeling out in his car, tires screaming into the night. I stood there, the cold biting my cheeks until the taillights vanished. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I unlocked my door, the silence inside deafening. I called Lila, my voice cracking. Dylan ambushed me, wanted his job back, blamed me for everything. She didn't miss a beat. "Predictable, asshole." "You okay?" I exhaled, sinking onto my couch. "Yeah, I think so." "It's done," she laughed, sharp. "Good, I'm coming over. I've got something for you." 20 minutes later, she was at my door, rain-soaked and grinning, a framed sketch in her hands. That phoenix, now finished, its wings spread wide over a bed of flames. "This is you," she said, thrusting it at me. "Burnt it down, rising up. I did it for your next place." Screw Dylan. I hugged her tight, tears stinging my eyes as the weight of the day lifted just a fraction. "You're the best," I whispered. She smirked, flopping onto my couch. "Damn right. Now pour me a drink, we're celebrating." I did, and for an hour we talked about anything but family, the phoenix watching from the coffee table like a guardian. Before bed, I grabbed my phone and typed a message to Mom and Dad. "Dylan's been stealing from me. Thousands. He lied about the wedding and you let him. I'm done." I hit send, my finger hovering over the screen as the rain started up again outside, a soft patter against the windows. They didn't reply. Not a word. And I didn't expect them to. I turned off the light, the phoenix's shadow flickering in the dark from a street lamp's glow. I'd cut the cord tonight, and whatever came next, I'd face it on my terms. The rain sang me to sleep, a quiet hymn for a war I'd just begun. The phone jolted me awake in the dead of night, its shrill ring cutting through the rain's lullaby that had carried me to sleep after last night's war. I fumbled for it in the dark, the screen glowing with Mum's name, and for a split second, I almost didn't answer, let it die like the ties I'd cut with that message. But I picked up, my voice groggy and guarded. "Hello?" Her tone was weary, frayed at the edges, nothing like the chipper mask she usually wore. "Narina, it's about Dylan. He's a mess. Candace left him today." I sat up, the sheets cold against my skin, the Feeney sketch still propped on my nightstand where I'd left it. "That's rough," I said, flat, waiting for the guilt trip I knew was coming. She didn't disappoint. "He's your brother. How can you be so cold? He's got nothing now, no job, no money." I stared at the ceiling, the shadows shifting with every raindrop on the window. "He stole from me, Mum. Thousands for years. He lied to you, to Dad, made you think it was his cash keeping you afloat." Her breath hitched, a pause that said she knew more than she'd ever admit. "He needs help," she pleaded. "Give him a job, Nerina. Just one more chance." The words lit a slow burn in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "No, he put my business, my life, on the line. I'm done bailing him out," she snapped, her voice rising. "How can you turn your back on family?" I cut her off, sharp. "Family doesn't steal from you. Family doesn't cut you out of a wedding and lie about it. You let him do this. You enabled it." Silence swallowed the line, then her tone turned to ice. "If that's how you feel, you're not part of this family anymore." The words stung, but they didn't break me. "Goodbye, Mom," I said and hung up, my thumb hovering over the block button before pressing it. Dad's number 2. The rain tapped on, a quiet witness as I lay back, staring at that phoenix, its wings a flicker of hope in the dark. I'd expected more pain, but all I felt was a strange, hollow peace. Weeks later, the wound had scabbed over. The silence from my parents, a new normal I didn't mind. Alma hummed along, a new accountant sorting Dylan's wreckage, and I was sketching plans for a 4th spot, something to pour myself into. But one afternoon, Jenny knocked on my office door, her face tight with unease. "Narina, your brother's outside. Says he needs to talk." My stomach dropped, the air thickening as I nodded. "Let him in." Dylan shuffled through the doorway, a ghost of the cocky bastard I'd fired. His hair greasy, his jacket rumpled, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. "Nerina," he muttered, his voice a rasp. I stayed behind my desk, arms crossed. "What do you want, Dylan?" He wouldn't sit, just stood there, shifting his weight. "Candace is gone, left me flat. Mom and Dad won't even pick up my calls." He laughed, a brittle sound that cracked mid-note. "Can you believe it? After all I did for them." I didn't flinch. "I haven't heard from them either." He nodded like that made sense. "They're ashamed. Dad read your article, said he's proud. What a joke. I need help, Narina." My jaw tightened. "Money?" He shook his head fast. "No, just a job. Take me back, we'll call it even." I studied him, the desperation in his eyes, but not a shred of regret. "No." I said, slow and firm. You need therapy, anger, pride, all that crap you've carried since we were kids. That's your fix, not me. His face twisted, a flash of the old Dylan breaking through. Therapy? I'm fine. You're the one with issues, always looking down on me. I leaned forward, voice low. Fine people, don't scream and steal. Get help. He exploded, kicking my chair so hard it skidded an inch. It's your fault! All of it, he yelled, then bolted, the door banging shut behind him as his footsteps faded down the hall. I sat there, the echo of his rage lingering, until Lila showed up that night, her knock a welcome break from the quiet. She stepped in with a bottle of Merlot and a framed phoenix sketch. The one she'd finished, now polished with gold ink tracing its flames. Heard Dylan pulled a stunt today, she said, setting the frame on my desk. You good? I nodded, pouring us both a glass. Yeah. He's a train wreck, but I'm not his conductor anymore, she grinned, raising her drink. To you then, the Phoenix who doesn't need their ashes. This is your real family. Me, Jenny, the crew. I clinked her glass, the weight of her words sinking in as I hung the frame above my desk, its fire catching the light. She was right, blood didn't make a home, loyalty did. Later, I got word Dylan's trial was set, court-ordered therapy for his blow-ups, a lifeline he'd probably fight. Mom and Dad were struggling too, no more checks from me to prop them up, but they stayed silent. Maybe they saw me now, maybe not. I didn't care. I stood in Alma's kitchen that night, the heat of the stoves warming my bones as I plated dishes with my team, their chatter filling the gaps my family left. This was real, solid mine, but something still hung in the air, a loose thread I couldn't name, tugging me toward whatever came next. I pulled up to the construction site of my fourth restaurant one crisp evening, the skeleton of steel beams clawing at a sky studded with stars, the air sharp with the scent of fresh dirt and promise. That loose thread from last night in Alma's kitchen where I'd plated dishes with my crew, their voices a balm to the silence my family left, had tugged me here, a pull I couldn't shake. The site was quiet, just the hum of distant traffic and the wind rustling my hair as I stepped out of the car, my boots crunching gravel underfoot. I'd poured everything into this, savings, sleepless nights, a vision of something new. And standing here, I felt the weight of it all, the good and the bad, pressing down like the earth itself. My bag, slung over my shoulder, held more than blueprints tonight. It carried a ghost I hadn't expected. I reached in, fingers brushing a crumpled envelope I'd found slipped under Alma's door a few days back. Dylan's scrawl on the front, Narina staring up at me like a dare. I'd shoved it aside then, too raw from his last outburst to face it, but now, under this wide-open sky, I couldn't run from it anymore. I slid the letter out, the paper worn at the edges, and unfolded it, my breath catching as I read. I hated you for shining. You were everything I couldn't be, and I took what I could, money, their pride, anything to feel bigger. You were right. I need help. Sorry's too late, but it's all I've got. The words hit like a fist, then melted into something softer. Pain, regret. A crack in the armor he'd worn so long. My chest tightened, a storm of feelings I couldn't name swirling up. Anger for the years he'd chipped away at me, sorrow for the brother he'd never been, and a strange, quiet ache for the kid he once was, before pride twisted him. I read it again, the stars blurring above as my eyes stung, and for a moment, I saw us at 10. Him teaching me to swing a bat, me cheering when he hit a foul ball, back when we were a team. But that was gone, burned away by his choices, and this letter was the last ember of it. I didn't owe him a reply, he'd face his court-ordered therapy, his wreckage, but I owed myself something. A clean break from the ashes he'd left behind. I dug a pack of matches from my glove box, the kind I kept for emergencies, and struck one, the flame flaring bright against the dark. The wind tugged at it, but I cupped my hand, shielding it as I held the letter to the fire. The paper caught fast, orange tongues licking up Dylan's words, curling them into smoke that stung my nose with a sharp, bitter tang. I dropped it to the gravel, watching the edges blacken and flake away, ashes lifting in the breeze like grey snowflakes under the starlight. Goodbye, Dylan, I whispered, the sound swallowed by the night, and as the last scrap burned out, a weight I hadn't known I carried slipped free. The wind swept the ashes across the site, scattering them over the dirt where my new restaurant would rise. and I let them go. No anger, no tears, just a calm I hadn't felt in years. I turned to the steel frame, picturing the phoenix Lila had drawn, its wings bold and gold, blazing above the entrance, a sign not just of this place, but of me, reborn from the mess I'd walked through. I thought of her then, Lila, who had framed that sketch and hung it in my office, her voice echoing from last night. This is your real family. Me, Jenny, the crew. She'd been there through every gut punch, nights I'd cried over bank loans, days we'd toasted new menus with cheap beer, and this phoenix was her gift, a mirror of the strength she saw in me. Jenny too, steady as a rock, and my team at Alma, their laughter a thread weaving something solid where blood had failed. Family wasn't the people who'd erased me from their photos or siphoned my dreams. It was the ones who stayed, who built with me. I climbed back into my car, the engine rumbling to life, and glanced at the site one last time. The stars burned fierce overhead, no clouds to dim them, and the wind carried a clean, cold bite that felt like a beginning. I pressed the gas, the road stretching out dark and open, and left the ashes where they fell. Dylan's words, my old life, all of it, behind me. Tomorrow, I'd cook, I'd build, I'd live. Not for them, but for me, a phoenix with wings no one could clip. The flame was out, but my light was just starting to blaze.